Part one, the political world was set buzzing after a speech delivered by Michelle Obama at the opening of the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago. What was intended to be a celebration of former President Barack Obama's legacy quickly became one of the most talked about political moments of the year. While Michelle Obama never directly mentioned Donald Trump by name, many observers believed her remarks created a sharp contrast between her husband's leadership style and the behavior of today's political figures. Standing before a crowd that included prominent political leaders, public officials, and supporters from across the country, Michelle Obama spoke passionately about the values she believes defined Barack Obama's presidency. She highlighted qualities such as integrity, calmness under pressure, empathy, fairness, and a commitment to public service. Throughout her speech, she painted a picture of leadership focused on long-term solutions rather than short-term political battles. One of the most widely discussed moments came when she described how her husband handled the pressures of the presidency. Michelle Obama praised him for remaining focused during difficult moments and for maintaining composure when facing intense criticism and political challenges. Her comments immediately drew attention because many political analysts interpreted them as an indirect comparison to Donald Trump. The audience responded enthusiastically as she reflected on some of the major achievements of the Obama administration. She spoke about efforts to address the financial crisis, expand healthcare access, and oversee major national security decisions. Each accomplishment was presented as evidence of what she described as steady and disciplined leadership. Observers quickly noted that the timing of the speech added even more significance to her remarks. Political tensions remain high across the country, and debates over leadership, character, and public conduct continue to dominate national conversations. In that environment, even indirect political messages can have a powerful impact. Michelle Obama also touched on a topic she has discussed frequently in recent years: the standards and expectations placed on public figures. She suggested that some leaders face greater scrutiny than others and argued that maintaining public trust requires accountability and consistency. Her comments resonated with supporters who believe public officials should be held to high ethical standards regardless of party affiliation. The event itself was designed to celebrate the opening of the Obama Presidential Center, a project years in the making. Supporters view the center as a place that will preserve history, promote civic engagement, and inspire future generations of leaders. Yet, despite the broader purpose of the event, much of the public discussion afterward focused on Michelle Obama's remarks and their political implications. News outlets, commentators, and social media users immediately began analyzing every major line from the speech. Some praised her for delivering what they viewed as a thoughtful defense of democratic values and responsible leadership. Others argued that her comments were politically motivated and intended to influence public opinion. As clips from the speech spread online, the debate only intensified. Supporters highlighted her emphasis on dignity, professionalism, and public service. Critics questioned whether a ceremonial event should have included remarks that could be interpreted as political criticism. Regardless of where people stood politically, few could deny that the speech captured national attention. The discussion surrounding Michelle Obama's comments reflects a larger debate about the role former presidents and first ladies play in American politics after leaving office. While some choose to remain largely out of the political spotlight, others continue to speak publicly about issues they consider important. Michelle Obama has consistently used her platform to discuss leadership, civic responsibility, education, and public engagement. For many Americans, her speech served as a reminder of the intense political divisions that continue to shape national conversations. It also highlighted how influential public figures can still command attention years after leaving the White House. Whether supporters viewed the speech as inspirational or critics viewed it as political, it successfully sparked a nationwide discussion. As reactions continued to pour in, one thing became clear. The speech had become much more than a tribute to a former president. It evolved into a broader conversation about leadership, character, and the qualities voters expect from those who hold positions of power. The controversy ensured that the event would remain in the headlines long after the ceremony ended. And as the political world continued debating the meaning behind Michelle Obama's words, attention began shifting toward how other major figures would respond. The reaction from political commentators, elected officials, and the broader public would soon become a story of its own, setting the stage for the next chapter in this unfolding political drama. Part 2. As the speech continued making headlines across television networks, online platforms, and political discussion forums, attention quickly turned to the reactions it generated. Supporters of Michelle Obama argued that her remarks reflected concerns shared by many Americans regarding leadership, public behavior, and accountability. Critics, however, viewed the speech through a different lens, claiming it was another example of political figures using public events to send indirect messages to opponents. Within hours of the event, clips from the speech were circulating widely across social media. Commentators analyzed individual phrases, television panels debated the meaning behind her words, and political strategists attempted to gauge the impact the speech might have on public opinion. What began as a dedication ceremony had evolved into one of the most discussed political stories of the week. Many analysts pointed out that Michelle Obama has maintained a unique position in American public life. Unlike many political figures who remain deeply involved in daily partisan battles, she has often focused her public appearances on broader themes such as education, civic engagement, public service, and community development. Because of that reputation, when she chooses to speak on issues connected to leadership and public conduct, her comments often attract significant attention. Observers noted that one reason the speech resonated so strongly was because it focused less on policy disagreements and more on personal qualities associated with leadership. Rather than discussing legislation or election campaigns, Michelle Obama emphasized characteristics such as discipline, patience, empathy, and resilience. Those themes allowed audiences to interpret the speech through their own political perspectives. Supporters praised what they described as a reminder that leadership extends beyond political victories and electoral success. They argued that character, temperament, and decision-making during difficult moments are equally important measures of a leader's effectiveness. For these individuals, the speech served as an opportunity to reflect on the standards they believe public officials should uphold. At the same time, critics questioned whether the remarks were intended to create a political contrast during an already heated national environment. Some argued that even indirect comparisons contribute to growing political polarization. Others suggested that major public events should focus on celebration rather than criticism, regardless of whether specific individuals are mentioned by name. Despite those disagreements, there was little debate about one fact: the speech succeeded in dominating the news cycle. Political analysts from across the ideological spectrum agreed that Michelle Obama had delivered a message that people were discussing long after the event ended. The broader conversation also highlighted the continuing influence of former presidents and first ladies in American politics. Although they no longer hold elected office, their words often carry substantial weight because of their experience and visibility. Public appearances by former White House occupants frequently generate intense media attention, especially when their comments intersect with current political debates. As coverage continued, journalists revisited Michelle Obama's previous interviews, speeches, and public statements. They found a consistent theme running through many of her remarks over recent years: the importance of responsibility, civic participation, and maintaining faith in democratic institutions. Her supporters argued that the Chicago speech fit naturally within that larger message. Meanwhile, political commentators speculated about how various leaders might respond. Some predicted that the controversy would fade after a few days, while others believed it could become part of a larger national discussion about leadership and political culture. Given the highly charged atmosphere surrounding modern politics, even seemingly simple remarks often become subjects of prolonged debate. Another factor contributing to the speech's impact was the symbolic setting. The Obama Presidential Center represents not only a historical project, but also a reflection on a significant period in American political history. By speaking in that environment, Michelle Obama connected her comments to broader questions about legacy, governance, and public service. For supporters of the Obama administration, the event provided an opportunity to celebrate accomplishments they believe had a lasting impact on the country. For critics, it served as a reminder of policy disagreements and ongoing ideological divisions. The differing reactions demonstrated how political history continues to shape current conversations. As days passed, public interest showed no signs of slowing. News organizations continued publishing analyses, opinion pieces, and reaction stories. Online discussions remained active, with users debating whether Michelle Obama's remarks should be viewed primarily as a tribute to her husband or as a commentary on contemporary politics. What made the moment particularly noteworthy was its ability to spark conversation without relying on direct confrontation. Rather than engaging in a traditional political attack, the speech focused on describing qualities she admired in Barack Obama. Yet many listeners interpreted those descriptions as carrying broader implications. That ambiguity helped fuel the ongoing debate. Political experts often note that some of the most effective speeches are those that allow audiences to draw their own conclusions. In this case, supporters and critics alike found material that reinforced their existing views. The result was a speech that generated discussion far beyond the walls of the ceremony itself. By the end of the week, it had become clear that the opening of the Obama Presidential Center would be remembered not only for its historical significance, but also for the national conversation it sparked. Questions about leadership, accountability, public behavior, and political culture remained at the center of the debate. And as those discussions continued across the country, attention increasingly shifted toward the responses from political figures, media personalities, and commentators who would soon weigh in on the controversy, ensuring that the story was far from over. Part 3. As the debate surrounding Michelle Obama's speech continued to grow, political commentators from across the country began offering their interpretations of what the moment represented. Some viewed it as a simple celebration of Barack Obama's legacy, while others believed it signaled a larger effort to shape the national conversation about leadership and public expectations. The discussion soon expanded beyond the specific remarks delivered in Chicago. Analysts started examining the broader political climate and asking why the speech had resonated so strongly with millions of Americans. The answer, many suggested, was that the country remains deeply divided over fundamental questions about what qualities voters should prioritize when evaluating their leaders. For some Americans, leadership is primarily measured through policy outcomes, economic performance, and campaign promises fulfilled. For others, character, temperament, and public conduct carry equal or even greater importance. Michelle Obama's speech touched directly on those themes, which is one reason it attracted such widespread attention. Across television networks and digital media platforms, experts debated whether public trust is built more through accomplishments or through personal behavior. The conversation quickly evolved into a broader reflection on how Americans define effective leadership in an increasingly polarized era. Supporters of Michelle Obama's message argued that public officials serve not only as policymakers, but also as representatives of national values. They emphasized the importance of professionalism, respect for institutions, and the ability to remain composed during moments of crisis. According to this perspective, the behavior displayed by leaders can influence public confidence just as much as their policy decisions. Critics, meanwhile, maintain that political results matter more than public image. They argued that voters ultimately judge leaders based on outcomes rather than rhetoric. From their viewpoint, speeches focusing on personality and conduct risk distracting attention from policy debates that directly affect citizens' lives. These contrasting viewpoints ensured that the discussion remained active long after the event concluded. Every new article, interview, and television segment seemed to generate additional debate. Social media platforms became filled with competing interpretations, with users sharing clips, commentary, and personal opinions regarding the significance of the speech. Political historians also entered the conversation, noting that presidential legacies are often shaped not only by actions taken while in office, but also by how former leaders are remembered years later. Public memory tends to focus on defining characteristics and major moments, creating narratives that continue influencing political discussions long after administrations end. The opening of the Obama Presidential Center provided an ideal backdrop for such reflections. Supporters viewed the center as a symbol of civic engagement and public service, while critics examined it through the lens of ongoing political disagreements. Regardless of perspective, few questioned the importance of the event itself. As media coverage intensified, comparisons between different leadership styles became increasingly common. Commentators analyzed how various presidents handled public criticism, national crises, and political opposition. These discussions frequently extended beyond specific individuals and focused instead on broader questions about governance and public expectations. One recurring theme involved the challenge of maintaining public trust in an era dominated by constant media coverage. Modern political figures operate under intense scrutiny, with every statement, decision, and public appearance subject to immediate analysis. In such an environment, even minor controversies can quickly become major national stories. Michelle Obama's supporters argued that her speech highlighted the importance of consistency and discipline in leadership. They suggested that maintaining composure under pressure remains one of the most valuable qualities any public official can possess. Critics countered that voters often prioritize tangible results over style or presentation. The disagreement reflected larger tensions within American politics. Citizens frequently differ not only on policy preferences, but also on the criteria they use to evaluate leaders. For some, effectiveness is measured through legislation and economic indicators. For others, ethical standards and public conduct play a central role. As the controversy continued, public opinion remained divided. Polls, interviews, and online discussions revealed a wide range of reactions. Some people praised the speech as thoughtful and inspiring, while others viewed it as unnecessarily political. The diversity of responses demonstrated how differently Americans interpret the same events. Meanwhile, political strategists closely monitored the situation. They understood that highly publicized moments can influence broader narratives and shape future discussions. Even when a speech does not directly address an election or policy proposal, it can still affect how audiences perceive political leaders and institutions. The sustained attention surrounding the speech also highlighted Michelle Obama's unique position in public life. Years after leaving the White House, she continues to command significant public interest. Her comments often generate headlines not because she currently holds office, but because many Americans still view her as an influential voice on issues related to leadership and civic responsibility. As another week of analysis and debate unfolded, one conclusion became increasingly difficult to ignore. The speech had succeeded in sparking a conversation far larger than the event itself. What began as a dedication ceremony had transformed into a nationwide discussion about leadership, accountability, public expectations, and the future direction of political discourse in America. Yet, even as commentators continued debating the meaning behind Michelle Obama's remarks, a new phase of the story was beginning. Reactions from influential political figures, media personalities, and public commentators would soon add another layer to the controversy, ensuring that the discussion remained firmly in the national spotlight. Part 4. By this stage, the discussion surrounding Michelle Obama's speech had moved far beyond the opening ceremony itself. What started as a tribute to a former president had evolved into a broader national conversation about political leadership, public expectations, and the direction of American discourse. News organizations continued covering the story, while commentators on both sides of the political spectrum attempted to frame the event in ways that supported their respective viewpoints. One reason the speech remained a major topic was because it arrived during a period of intense political uncertainty. Americans were already engaged in ongoing debates about the economy, national priorities, foreign policy, and the role of government. Against that backdrop, any discussion involving leadership and character was likely to receive significant attention. Many analysts noted that the speech succeeded because it avoided direct confrontation while still delivering a message that people found meaningful. Rather than attacking specific individuals, Michelle Obama focused on describing values she believed were essential for effective leadership. That approach allowed audiences to interpret her words through their own experiences and political beliefs. Political observers frequently point out that speeches become influential when they connect with broader public concerns. In this case, questions about trust, accountability, and responsibility were already prominent in national conversations. Michelle Obama's remarks entered that environment at precisely the moment when many Americans were actively debating those issues. Supporters argued that the speech served as a reminder of what public service is supposed to represent. They emphasized themes such as commitment, sacrifice, and the responsibility leaders have toward the citizens they serve. According to these supporters, the speech encouraged Americans to think beyond partisan disagreements and focus on fundamental principles. Critics, however, maintained that such speeches rarely exist outside politics. They argued that even indirect comments can influence public perceptions and contribute to existing divisions. From their perspective, the timing and visibility of the event ensured that it would be interpreted through a political lens regardless of its original purpose. The resulting debate revealed something important about modern political communication. In today's media environment, every major speech can instantly become part of a much larger national conversation. A single comment can generate thousands of news stories, social media posts, interviews, and opinion pieces within a matter of hours. This reality has transformed the way public figures communicate. Every statement is analyzed, every phrase is scrutinized, and every public appearance becomes an opportunity for supporters and critics alike to reinforce their narratives. Michelle Obama's speech became a textbook example of how quickly a single event can dominate public discussion. Another factor contributing to the speech's impact was the emotional connection many people feel toward former presidents and first ladies. For supporters of the Obama administration, the event represented a chance to reflect on a period they remember positively. For critics, it provided an opportunity to revisit disagreements that remain unresolved even years later. Political historians often explain that presidential legacies are constantly evolving. Public opinion changes over time as new events occur and new generations examine historical records. The opening of a presidential center frequently serves as a moment for reevaluation, allowing citizens to reconsider the achievements and challenges associated with a particular administration. That process was clearly visible in the reactions following Michelle Obama's remarks. Discussions about leadership quickly expanded into conversations about historical legacy, institutional trust, and the role former leaders continue to play in public life. These topics extended far beyond the immediate controversy and touched on questions that have shaped American politics for decades. Throughout the week, interviews with voters revealed a wide range of perspectives. Some expressed admiration for Michelle Obama's willingness to speak publicly about issues she considers important. Others believed former political figures should avoid comments that could be interpreted as criticism of current leaders. The diversity of opinions highlighted the complexity of the debate. Meanwhile, media outlets continued exploring the broader significance of the Obama Presidential Center itself. Supporters described it as a space dedicated to civic engagement, education, and leadership development. They argued that the center's mission aligns closely with many of the themes discussed during the opening ceremony. The more people talked about the speech, the more apparent it became that the conversation was no longer solely about one event. Instead, it had become a reflection of larger questions facing the nation. What qualities should Americans expect from their leaders? How should public figures conduct themselves under pressure? What role should former presidents and first ladies play after leaving office? These questions do not have simple answers, which is one reason the debate remained active. Different citizens prioritize different values, and those differences naturally shape how they interpret political events. The controversy surrounding the speech illustrated just how varied those perspectives can be. As the story continued unfolding, commentators increasingly focused on what might come next. Would the discussion gradually fade from public attention, or would it influence future conversations about leadership and political culture? Could the themes raised during the speech continue shaping public debate in the months ahead? No one could answer those questions with certainty. What was clear, however, was that Michelle Obama's remarks had succeeded in generating a level of engagement that few public speeches achieve. The event had sparked conversations in homes, workplaces, newsrooms, and online communities across the country. And while the nation continued debating the meaning of her words, another chapter of the story was already emerging. New reactions, fresh commentary, and broader discussions about the future of American politics were beginning to take center stage, setting up the final phase of a controversy that showed no signs of disappearing anytime soon. Part 5. As the controversy surrounding Michelle Obama's speech entered its next phase, it became increasingly clear that the event would be remembered for far more than the opening of a presidential center. What began as a celebration of history had evolved into a national discussion about leadership, public expectations, and the future direction of political culture in America. The debate continued because it touched on questions that extend beyond any single politician or political party. Americans have long disagreed about what qualities matter most in a leader. Some prioritize policy achievements and measurable results, while others focus heavily on character, temperament, and the ability to unite people during challenging times. Michelle Obama's remarks reignited that conversation and encouraged millions of people to think about those questions once again. Across the country, citizens discussed the speech from very different perspectives. Supporters viewed it as a powerful statement about responsibility, integrity, and public service. They believed it highlighted values that remain essential regardless of political affiliation. Critics, meanwhile, argued that even indirect political commentary contributes to polarization and distracts attention from policy issues that affect everyday life. Despite those disagreements, one fact remained undeniable. The speech generated a level of public engagement that few events achieve. News coverage continued for days, social media discussions remained active, and political commentators repeatedly returned to the themes raised during the ceremony. The story became a reflection of the larger national mood, illustrating both the deep divisions and the shared concerns that continue to shape American politics. Many observers pointed out that moments like these reveal the lasting influence of former presidents and first ladies. Even after leaving public office, they remain important voices in national conversations. Their words carry historical weight, and their perspectives often attract attention because they have experienced leadership at the highest levels of government. For Michelle Obama, the speech reinforced her role as one of the most recognizable public figures in the country. Whether people agreed with her message or disagreed with it, they paid attention. Her ability to spark discussion demonstrated the continued relevance of her voice in debates about leadership, civic engagement, and public responsibility. The event also highlighted how political narratives are formed in the modern media era. A speech delivered to a live audience can quickly become a nationwide topic through television coverage, digital platforms, and social media sharing. Within hours, millions of people who never attended the event can watch clips, read analysis, and form their own conclusions. This rapid spread of information creates both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, it allows important conversations to reach a wider audience. On the other hand, it often encourages people to interpret events through partisan lenses. The reaction to Michelle Obama's speech reflected both realities, as supporters and critics frequently emphasized different aspects of the same remarks. As discussions continued, many commentators argued that the most important takeaway was not any individual sentence from the speech, but the broader questions it raised. What kind of leadership do Americans want in the future? How should public officials respond to criticism? What standards should voters use when evaluating those who seek positions of power? These questions remain central to democratic societies because they influence how citizens choose their leaders and how leaders choose to govern. They are not questions that can be answered in a single speech, a single election, or a single political cycle. Instead, they continue evolving as new challenges emerge and public expectations change. Political analysts noted that debates over leadership often become most intense during periods of uncertainty. When citizens are concerned about economic conditions, national security, or social issues, they naturally focus more attention on the individuals responsible for making important decisions. That reality helps explain why Michelle Obama's comments resonated so strongly with many Americans. The opening of the Obama Presidential Center was intended to celebrate a legacy and create a space dedicated to public engagement. In many ways, the national conversation that followed reflected that mission. People from different backgrounds and political perspectives found themselves discussing leadership, history, and civic responsibility, topics that remain fundamental to democratic life. Whether supporters viewed the speech as inspirational or critics saw it as controversial, the event succeeded in generating meaningful discussion. It reminded Americans that leadership is about more than titles and positions. It is also about the values, decisions, and examples that shape public trust over time. As the headlines gradually began to fade, the larger questions raised by the speech remained. Citizens continued debating what qualities they expect from leaders, what standards should apply to public officials, and how political figures can earn and maintain public confidence. Those conversations are likely to continue long after the specific controversy itself disappears from the news cycle. In the end, the lasting significance of the moment may not be found in the immediate reactions or the political arguments that followed. Instead, it may be found in the broader discussion it inspired about leadership, accountability, and the responsibilities that come with public service. Regardless of political affiliation, those are issues that affect every citizen in every generation. And that is why the speech continued attracting attention long after the ceremony ended. It was not simply about one event, one individual, or one political disagreement. It became part of a much larger conversation about the future of leadership in America, and that conversation is far from over. In the days that followed, the conversation surrounding Michelle Obama's remarks continued to expand far beyond the walls of the Obama Presidential Center. What had initially appeared to be a ceremonial moment honoring a former president had transformed into a national debate about leadership, legacy, and the expectations Americans place on those who occupy positions of power. News organizations continued to publish analysis after analysis. Political commentators dissected every major point from the speech, and social media remained flooded with reactions from supporters and critics alike. The reason the discussion refused to disappear was simple. The themes raised during the speech connected to concerns that millions of Americans already had about the state of politics in the country. Questions about trust, accountability, responsibility, and public conduct have become central issues in modern political discourse, and Michelle Obama's comments touched each of those topics without directly engaging in partisan conflict. As a result, the speech managed to appeal to audiences who were interested not only in politics, but also in the broader issue of what leadership should look like in a democratic society. Many observers argued that one of the most significant aspects of the speech was its focus on personal qualities rather than policy disputes. Political debates often revolve around legislation, economic performance, election results, and campaign promises. Yet Michelle Obama directed attention toward characteristics such as discipline, composure, patience, empathy, and resilience. Those qualities are difficult to measure through statistics or polling data, but many people believe they play a critical role in determining whether a leader can effectively guide a nation through difficult periods. Throughout American history, some of the most admired leaders have been remembered not only for what they accomplished, but also for how they conducted themselves during moments of crisis. Historians often note that public confidence can depend as much on a leader's demeanor as on the policies they implement. This idea became a major part of the conversation as commentators reflected on Michelle Obama's remarks. Supporters argued that leadership requires a steady hand, especially during periods of uncertainty. They suggested that citizens look to public officials for reassurance and direction when facing national challenges. According to this perspective, the ability to remain calm under pressure is not merely a personal virtue, but a practical necessity. Critics responded by emphasizing that outcomes matter more than style. They argued that citizens ultimately judge leaders based on results rather than personality traits. Nevertheless, even among those who disagreed with Michelle Obama's message, there was widespread recognition that the speech had succeeded in shaping the public conversation. Another reason the event remained in the spotlight was the symbolic importance of the Obama Presidential Center itself. Presidential libraries and centers serve as more than museums. They are institutions designed to preserve history, encourage civic engagement, and provide future generations with opportunities to learn about government and public service. The opening of such a center naturally invites reflection on the administration it represents. For supporters of Barack Obama, the event was an opportunity to celebrate accomplishments and revisit a chapter of American political history that they regard positively. For critics, it provided a chance to evaluate that legacy through a different lens. The resulting discussions demonstrated how historical interpretations continue to evolve over time. Political legacies are rarely settled immediately after a presidency ends. Instead, they are shaped over decades through public debate, scholarly analysis, and changing social conditions. The reactions to Michelle Obama's speech illustrated that process in real time. Citizens from across the political spectrum engaged in conversations about history, governance, and public expectations. In doing so, they revealed how strongly the past continues to influence contemporary politics. As the story developed, media coverage increasingly focused on the broader implications of the speech rather than specific lines from it. Journalists explored questions about civic responsibility, institutional trust, and public engagement. Opinion writers examined whether leadership should be defined primarily through achievements or through values. Television panels debated the role former presidents and first ladies should play in shaping political discussions after leaving office. These conversations highlighted the complex relationship between public figures and public opinion. Even after their time in office ends, former national leaders often remain influential voices. Their statements can shape debates, influence perceptions, and inspire both support and criticism. Michelle Obama's speech became a powerful example of that phenomenon. Years after leaving the White House, she remained capable of generating headlines and influencing national discussions. The sustained attention demonstrated that her perspective continues to carry significant weight among large segments of the public. Beyond the immediate political reactions, the speech also prompted reflection on the changing nature of public discourse. Modern communication technology allows speeches to reach millions of people almost instantly. A remark delivered before a live audience can be shared worldwide within minutes. This environment creates opportunities for engagement, but also increases the likelihood of controversy. Every statement is recorded, analyzed, interpreted, and debated across countless platforms. As a result, public figures operate under an unprecedented level of scrutiny. Michelle Obama's speech became part of that reality. Supporters circulated clips highlighting themes they found inspiring, while critics emphasized sections they viewed as politically charged. The same speech generated dramatically different interpretations depending on the perspectives of those discussing it. This divergence illustrated one of the defining characteristics of contemporary politics. Citizens often experience the same events through entirely different lenses. Yet, despite these differences, there was broad agreement that the speech had touched on issues that mattered deeply to many Americans. Questions about leadership standards, public trust, and civic responsibility resonate across ideological lines, even when people disagree about the answers. That shared interest helps explain why the conversation remained active long after the event concluded. The discussion was not merely about one speech or one political figure. It reflected broader concerns about the future of democratic institutions and the qualities citizens expect from those who seek public office. In that sense, the event became a catalyst for a much larger dialogue. Political scientists often argue that democracies depend on public engagement. Citizens must remain informed, participate in civic life, and hold leaders accountable. The reactions to Michelle Obama's remarks suggested that many Americans continue to take those responsibilities seriously. Whether they agreed or disagreed with her perspective, they engaged with the ideas she presented and debated their significance. Such engagement is a fundamental part of democratic culture. It allows citizens to examine competing viewpoints, challenge assumptions, and consider alternative interpretations of important issues. The controversy surrounding the speech demonstrated that political disagreement does not necessarily indicate democratic weakness. In many cases, it reflects active participation in the public sphere. As weeks passed and new stories began competing for attention, the themes raised during the speech continued appearing in political discussions. Commentators referenced them during debates about elections, governance, and public conduct. Journalists revisited them when covering national issues. Citizens incorporated them into broader conversations about the future of the country. In this way, the speech achieved something that relatively few public addresses accomplish. It moved beyond the event itself and became part of an ongoing national dialogue. The lasting significance of the moment may ultimately depend less on immediate reactions and more on the questions it encouraged people to consider. What qualities should define effective leadership? How should public officials respond to criticism and adversity? What responsibilities accompany positions of power? How can citizens evaluate leaders fairly while maintaining high standards? These questions have existed throughout American history, and they will likely continue shaping political debates for generations to come. Michelle Obama's speech did not provide definitive answers to those questions, nor was it intended to do so. Instead, it invited audiences to think about them, discuss them, and apply them to their own understanding of leadership. The intensity of the public response demonstrated that many people were eager to engage in that conversation. Whether they praised the speech or criticized it, they recognized that it addressed issues of enduring importance. In the final analysis, the event underscored a simple but powerful reality. Leadership remains one of the most important and contested subjects in democratic societies. Citizens care deeply about who leads them, how those leaders behave, and what values they represent. As long as those concerns remain central to public life, speeches that address them will continue attracting attention. The opening of the Obama Presidential Center may have been the occasion, but the national conversation that followed was about something much larger. It was about the standards by which leaders are judged, the expectations citizens hold, and the continuing effort to define what responsible leadership should look like in a rapidly changing world. And for that reason, the debate sparked by Michelle Obama's remarks is likely to remain relevant long after the headlines themselves have faded from view. As the national conversation continued evolving, another important theme began emerging from the debate: the role of public expectations in shaping political leadership. Throughout history, citizens have often projected their hopes, frustrations, and aspirations onto public figures, expecting them not only to govern effectively, but also to embody certain ideals. This expectation creates a unique challenge for leaders because they are constantly evaluated on multiple levels at once. Voters assess policies, decisions, communication styles, personal conduct, and even symbolic actions. Michelle Obama's remarks resonated with many people because they addressed this broader reality. Her comments encouraged audiences to think about leadership not merely as a position of authority, but as a responsibility that carries significant influence over public culture. Supporters argued that leaders help set the tone for national conversations and can influence how citizens engage with one another, particularly during periods of disagreement. According to this perspective, leadership involves more than managing institutions. It also includes demonstrating values that contribute to social stability and public trust. Critics continued to emphasize that elected officials should primarily be judged by their effectiveness in solving problems and improving people's lives. Yet, even among those who disagreed with the message, there was acknowledgement that public conduct remains an important part of political life. The discussion therefore expanded beyond individual personalities and entered the realm of civic philosophy. Commentators explored whether democratic societies function best when leaders act as role models, or whether voters should separate personal characteristics from governing ability. These questions generated extensive debate because they touch on issues that have challenged democracies for generations. Some citizens believe that character is the foundation upon which successful leadership is built. Others argue that practical competence should outweigh concerns about style or image. The continuing attention given to Michelle Obama's speech demonstrated that there is no universal agreement on where that balance should be drawn. At the same time, the conversation highlighted how political narratives are formed and sustained in the modern media environment. A single event can inspire weeks of discussion as journalists, analysts, academics, and citizens offer competing interpretations. Every new perspective adds another layer to the story, transforming a moment into a larger cultural conversation. This process was clearly visible in the aftermath of the speech. What began as commentary on leadership gradually expanded into discussions about public trust, democratic norms, civic engagement, and historical legacy. The event became a case study in how public discourse evolves, showing that political moments often gain significance because of the conversations they inspire rather than the specific words that were spoken. For younger audiences especially, the debate provided an opportunity to examine the qualities they hope future leaders will possess. Surveys and public interviews suggested that many citizens remain deeply interested in questions of accountability, transparency, and integrity. They want leaders who can address complex challenges while maintaining public confidence. Whether those expectations are realistic or attainable remains a subject of debate, but their importance is difficult to ignore. As attention gradually shifted toward other news stories, the themes raised during the speech continued influencing political discussions. Analysts referenced them when evaluating candidates, journalists cited them when examining public controversies, and citizens discussed them during conversations about the future direction of the country. This lingering influence suggested that the speech had achieved something more enduring than a temporary headline. It had contributed to an ongoing dialogue about the standards by which leaders are judged and the values that citizens believe should guide public life. In many respects, that may be the most significant outcome of all. Political controversies often fade quickly, replaced by new developments and fresh debates. However, discussions about leadership tend to endure because they address fundamental questions that every generation must confront. What qualities inspire confidence? What responsibilities accompany power? How should leaders respond when faced with criticism or adversity? What role does character play in public service? These questions remain relevant regardless of party affiliation, election cycles, or specific political disputes. The reactions to Michelle Obama's remarks demonstrated that Americans continue grappling with those issues and remain deeply invested in the answers. Ultimately, the lasting impact of the moment may not be measured by headlines, polling numbers, or media coverage. Instead, it may be measured by the conversations it encouraged among ordinary citizens. By prompting reflection on leadership, accountability, and civic responsibility, the speech became part of a broader national dialogue that extends beyond any single event or political figure. As that dialogue continues, Americans will likely keep debating the qualities they expect from their leaders and the standards they believe should guide public service. Those discussions are essential to democratic life because they help shape collective expectations and influence how future leaders are evaluated. And while opinions about the speech itself may remain divided, its ability to generate meaningful conversation ensured that its influence would extend far beyond the ceremony where it was delivered, becoming another chapter in the ongoing effort to define what leadership means in the modern era and what responsibilities accompany the privilege of serving the public.